Thank you. There you go. Motion by Arnerick, second by Tatson. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Do I have a motion? Are there any items to be removed from the consent calendar?
Mr. I'd just like to make a comment on item 13. I don't have an issue with the numbers, but just to suggest that before this goes on to the full board, that we add the cumulative totals on this. I mentioned to Ross earlier. It tells what the changes are, but so we kind of know where we're at on that project.
Yeah, is that item 3 and the change orders?
I'm sorry, 3. You're right. It's under change orders. 3. Sorry, I picked the wrong. Thank you.
Which item?
Item number 3. The only change orders listed are San Pablo Dam.
Okay.
Our AAA project.
Okay, so nothing's removed from the agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent calendar. Okay, motion by Tatson, second by Pierce. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, which brings us down to item 14. What?
For consent calendar, Tatson, Pierce.
Brings us down to item 14, legislative update.
Good morning, Commissioners. I know it's a really long agenda this morning, so we'll keep the legislative update fairly brief. You do have a report from Keystone Public Affairs on actions at the federal level. Something that just happened yesterday was there was a resolution to continue funding the FAA for another 14 months. If you've been following the FAA saga, it's been going back and forth about whether they change out air traffic control and privatize it. So nothing major is happening with that. They're just continuing the funding for another 14 months, and they'll have that discussion later on. So you do have a report in your packet. I did want to mention that our contract with Keystone Public Affairs has ended, so we're going to be trying out a new firm on a short-term contract, and they have some folks that we think could be really advantageous to helping us advance our interests. One of the principals, Jason Tai, used to be the chief of staff for Congressman Lipinski, who leads the Science, Technology, and Research Committee. So we're gonna try them out for a short term and see how we like them. And with that, I'll turn it over to our state advocate, Mark Watts, because there's a lot happening there right now.
Thank you, Lindsay, and good morning. I'll make this pretty brief, but I'll run through several bills that have been of interest over the last couple of months, starting with the Autonomous Vehicle Pilot Program, AB 1592. We ran into a bit of an irony. The bill was subjected to some committee-suggested amendments that dealt with insurance and limits on the use of vehicle data, and that caused it to be referred to Appropriations Committee. The irony being that the TechNet group, the Silicon Valley and other tech innovators organization, don't like that language, would like to have it taken out. It would have been nice if they had spoken up prior to the committee and we could have avoided having to go to Appropriations Committee. But nevertheless, the bill is set for August 1st. I'm working with Assemblymember Bonilla's office on getting language processed so that if the committee agrees that we can take it out in appropriations, that'll all take place within the next week and a half. So otherwise, that bill is in good shape. The Senate Transportation Committee is looking favorably towards removing that language, but they want to substitute something back in, so therein will lie the details. And you all know the great joint team effort on AB 1665. I won't go into any details on that. That last week was kind of a rush. We did something I'd never done before, and it was fun to be participating in. I do want to recognize Ryan Moramuni from Assemblymember Bonilla's office playing quarterback this whole 6 or 7 months. He did a fantastic job. I just can't tip my hat enough to him. But that bill's on the books and it's effective, so nice job to everybody. The bill that dealt with bus on shoulder ran into a problem tangentially with the Highway Patrol. They were not allowed to take a position, but they activated the Highway Patrolmen's Officers Association, and they went after it hammer and tong. First, it was going to be scaled back to 1, maybe 2. We put an effort in to try to keep one of our corridors in the bill. Ultimately, There was so much opposition that the author was forced to pull the bill, and it's dead for this year. So we'll have to revisit that next year. It's a shame.
Please.
So what will change between now and next year that might make the bill more viable?
I think it was the breadth of the scope of the bill, the number of different individual agencies in it, and the factor that two of the entities that already have authorization haven't used it, use the authority that has been granted to them in past years. So I think if we're going to be able to do something in the next session or the session after, I think we need to see some progress on one of these other agencies and maybe a more limited scope bill rather than a broad shotgun approach to adding people in or organizations in.
Chair Bud, may I chime in on that as well? And I think what we need to do, in addition to what Mark's talking about, is really trying to find out what some of the other agencies are doing. So I've talked to a couple of folks at Caltrans about it, and they want to keep it in kind of a, I don't want to say pilot, but a limited scope mode for a while. And if agencies are just doing this without a plan, that's trying to get the authority, I think they're in a weak position. We have a plan that has this defined scope, so we need to keep working on the 680 scope to show that it's real, and then try to use that to position ourselves in a stronger position.
And if I might piggyback on that. If we did get to a point where there was a plan that the state was embracing, I think with that would possibly come CHP acceptance. Assemblymember Quirk carried a bill that dealt with the premiums on the sale of bonds. That bill did pass the Transportation Committee. You had expressed interest in it, and it's on Senate third reading, ready to go to the governor, and it looks like it's in decent shape. There's been no recent opposition to the bill. There had been some Republican resistance, but the committee looked at it favorably, and that's moved ahead. And the last bill that we talked about several times at this level, at this committee, was SB 885 by Senator Wolk, that dealt with the duty to defend in public works contracts. I've never seen an analysis performed by a committee that was so rigorously and strongly opposed to a measure. And I think that led to the unwinding. The bill was ultimately pulled by the author and is not going to progress this year either. So that measure is something to take up next year. Finally, I just mentioned the governor did sign the budget last week, and in the transportation arena, a lot of disappointment. Nothing, no progress on new revenues. Nothing much in the bill, in the budget bill for transportation. Just kind of work as usual. I will note that a number of the trailer bills were signed at the same time. In the transportation area, we have identical trailer bills except for one section, and that one section deals with HOV access stickers. And there is a big disagreement between the two houses how to progress on that. So the transportation trailer bill has not moved forward. The one effect you might feel locally is in both the trailer bills is a short-term, for lack of a better term, fix to a problem that popped up this year dealing with the distribution of transit assistance formula money to your local operators in the area. And as a consequence, that fix was not advanced to the governor for his approval. So the California Transit Association is working on a workaround, maybe another bill or something. Nevertheless, there will be a potential effect of a smaller amount of allocations to transit operators until that fix is adopted. So, sorry, it's a minor amount, but it's worth fighting for. So that would complete my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions?
Can I add something? One, Jeff Lindley, who used to be the administrator for Federal Highway Administration during the earthquake years, he's heading up the Office of Operations. He's the associate administrator. They've just adopted guidelines for use of shoulders. So the Federal Highway Administration. So take that in when you and we can send you the link for that legislation.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I wanted to mention that we were part of a team that went to the UC Berkeley to talk about the Institute of Transportation Studies. So embedded in the budget is $3 million for the ITS program, Institute of Transportation Studies. This is the first increase they've gotten since 1948 or something like that. So 70 years ago, they were allocated a little bit of raise to maybe $800,000, and they've been operating on that budget since the late 40s. And so we took Assemblymember Frazier in to talk about research, and it resulted in a $3 million allocation for 1 year, and they're trying to get that implemented over the next budget cycles.
Yeah, Mark, would you mind, you skipped over the TCRP item. We have a couple of members of the Hercules City Council here today on another matter, so they probably want to hear about that.
Yeah, this is an interesting development. A number of projects funded with TCRP, Traffic Congestion Relief Program funding, that actually the program dates back to the early years of the Gray Davis administration, provided general fund funding for transportation projects. I know a special list that was enacted in statute. It stalled out when the legislature borrowed TCRP funds or suspended the transfer of general fund money to the TCRP in the mid-2000s. And but they did substitute the allocation of potential tribal gaming funds that were due to the state as a backup source for the TCRP. Those have not been coming in. As a consequence, in 2008, the Transportation Commission essentially stopped any new allocations for projects except for a small amount that was being transferred in from one of the propositions that passed. So they divided the remaining projects into two tiers. One was a tier that allowed folks that were going to cash flow the repayments versus ones that couldn't afford to do that. And in that latter mix was the Hercules train station project. There's like $700,000 that were programmed, which was the key word. And then early this year when the MCO tax, this is kind of a wild story, but when the MCO tax was approved, one of the demands by some of the groups was an early repayment of transportation loans, and the governor agreed, because he had already proposed it in his budget, to $148 million of repayments from the general fund back to the TCRP for allocation to projects like the Hercules Station project. And as a consequence, when you delve into that project and find that it was programmed, which meets the test of the Commission, Caltrans, and the statute that was passed, AB 133, there's a process underway. The CTC just adopted an amendment to their TCRP program at their commission last week, and the county and the Transportation Authority can work with local proponents to have that money repaid sometime, probably around January of 2017. So it's an interesting byproduct of another legislative agreement that released the $148 million that contains the $700,000 within that list.
Okay, anything else on this one?
One comment, sir. Yes. Mark, everybody has big ears, and last night we heard that there was a lot of activity in Sacramento, and you did a great job.
Oh.
And it was explained to the board last night. So
Okay.
I just wanted you to know that we do appreciate that, and the whole board heard it last night. So, but I do concur. I guess you were a little busy.
Yes.
Julie?
Yeah, Mark, I had a question, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention earlier, but the very last item in your report is the DMV registration fee increase. And there are two numbers here, and I want to know which one's right. I hope it's the $10 per vehicle, not the additional $100 fee.
Correct.
It's a typo?
It's a typo. It's $10.
Getting ready to pay that, and I'm thinking, whoa, $100 increase. That's a lot. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item 15, Measure C status update.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Hisham Raimi, Engineering Manager. I'm happy to give you an update on the status of Measure C, which expired back in March 2009. Brian and I have been working on this item for the last couple months, and hopefully at the end we will move forward with closing out this measure. As of mid-June, we have about $19 million left in Measure C, and just to give you a perspective, that's less than 1.3% of the amount we collected over the life of Measure C, the $1.1 billion we've collected. So we've spent pretty much everything except for $19 million, and the bulk of it, $14 million, is for 6 projects that are still underway, and they are listed in your staff report. The major one is 684, and we anticipate there is $8 million on that project. We anticipate expending that balance really quickly in the next year as we move forward with the utility relocation on that project. So there is this $14 million for the ongoing projects. There is another 4.3 that is remaining in reserve for Measure C. We've set aside that reserve back in 2008 strategic plan for economic uncertainty and so on. And there is $0.3 million in savings from completed projects. Projects came in lower than what we programmed for them in the strategic plan. And finally, another $500,000, we were anticipating to use it for program management in fiscal year 11 and 12. Instead, we ended up using Measure J for that. So if you add up these numbers, it's pretty much the 14 plus $4.7 million in miscellaneous things. That's adds up to the $19 million. So on your staff reports, there are about 5 issues we seek your direction on. We do have some recommendations, and we would like maybe to discuss them one at a time to see if you agree with our proposed approach. And the first one, for the remaining $14 million on the 6 projects, we anticipate that most of these funds will be expended by June 30th, 2018, about a year and a half from now. And, we think having a deadline, if we tell the sponsors they have until that date to spend that money, that will motivate them to expend our money faster. So we're proposing that we put that deadline, and if somebody misses the deadline, they can come and basically get to the board and ask for an extension if they have to. So that's the first issue and our recommendation related to that. The second one related to the reserve, the $4.3 million we have now in Measure C reserve. We think, a reserve gives you a flexibility to deal with a whole suite of issues if they come up, including an economic uncertainty. And we propose that in June 30th, 2018, we roll that Measure C reserve into a Measure J reserve. We create a new Measure J reserve and roll that money into it to deal with various issues that may come up during the life of Measure J. The third issue is the savings. We have about $300,000 in savings from completed projects. We recommend you move $200,000 into the Measure C reserve, and we do have one project that was completed a long time ago, but we're still trying to close out the right-of-way phase on it. This is the Highway 4 West gap closure because of mitigation issues. We anticipate it may need a little bit more money, so we are recommending you keep $100,000 from that savings. We will come back in a future amendment to our strategic plan to move it into that project, pending your approval, of course. And the last one is the $500,000 we anticipated to use for program management, and we ended up using on Measure J. We propose you roll that into the Measure C as well. So at the end, if you agree with the recommendations, basically there will be $5 million in reserves, in Measure C reserves. that will be rolled in Measure J in June 30th, 2018. And talking about the reserve, we have various issues that we need to deal with. We have a new measure that we need to put on the ballot this November, and we have to pay for the election cost, and that's could be up to $1 million. So the proposal here is, if we move forward with the new measure, that we use $1 million from the Measure C reserve, cutting it basically from $5 million to $4 million to pay for the election cost. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay,
I don't have any questions. I think this is, it's a good motivation. I think June 2018 is appropriate. I'd make a motion that we accept staff recommendation.
just second.
Bob? Couple of questions. I was under one, and I don't, maybe my imagination ran wild. I was under the impression we couldn't take Measure C and throw it into Measure J. I don't know where I came up with that, but why didn't we do, because that Measure C has been around ever since I've been here.
Correct. That's Measure C, started in 1988 and expired 2009. I think, we created the Measure C reserve back in 2008 to deal with the economic uncertainty and other issues. I think it is under the board discretion to keep that reserve. We're just going to call it Measure J instead of Measure C. So we don't have any more Measure C dollars on our books.
And then explain to me, we can take Measure C money and throw it in election on extension of Measure J?
Yes, actually we.
And that's legal?
Yes, we did that, yes.
So what'd you say?
It's a new, not extended.
Okay. New measure, but you can take old money and throw it to new money.
It's you're creating a reserve, and we're labeling it as Measure J reserve.
It's not the campaign. It's the cost charged by the county to put the measure on.
Got it.
So, do we have a second?
Oh, somebody already gave a second.
Okay, so we had a motion by Arnrich, second by Tatson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, item 16, State Route 4, Balfour Road interchange. Request for the executive director to award construction contract number 427. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Ivan Ramirez, I'm the construction manager for the authority. So at the, this is an action item. At the February meeting of this year, the authority gave staff permission to advertise, administer, and award this contract. As you know, we have had some difficulty getting through the goal line to be able to advertise this project. We have gotten some good news over the last couple of days. It appears that the right-of-way agreements that we were waiting for to be able to allow Kinder Morgan to get to work and also to give Caltrans the green light to give us the right-of-way permit to get in to do the work. It appears that that's scheduled to occur before the 21st of this month. So with that in mind, we put this package together before we knew that, but the idea of what we're asking for today is that normally through the process of advertising and receiving the bids, we look for, we receive the bids and we check for responsible bids. We come to the board afterwards and ask for permission to award the contract. If there's any protest, we also ask your permission to resolve it and then award the contract. Given the timelines that we're in right now with this construction contract, we are asking you to give the executive director the discretion to resolve any protest and also to award any contract prior to being able to come to you in September, because we go dark in August, and that has the potential to delay starting the work. So, so what we're asking you for today is to give the executive director that authority, and come back to you at APC of next month and at the board meeting and give you an update of where we are. We hope to be able to get to construction late August and take advantage of at least a portion of this construction season. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
So thank you. And I know that it says that there's sufficient funds program, but what do we, what's our estimate of what the bids will be?
So the engineers estimate it's around $35 million. I think, don't quote me on that number.
But that kind of number. And I guess the only thing I didn't see in here was, this is essentially a blank check authority. So if it's the lowest responsible bid is $45 million, the authorization is to sign it. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding.
It's got to meet our budget criteria.
Yeah, it'd be, the decision process would be the same as whether we come to the board or go to Randy, is if it has to be within the budget, it has to meet all the other requirements for the bid, and you know, statutorily, we can't award a contract without budget regardless of whether we think it's a good
But
idea
the
or
question
not.
is it the budget for the entire, you know, is there a budget for this contract, or is there a budget for the entire project, which could include other kinds of work?
Well, both, actually. So we do have a budget for the entire project, and we've already awarded a contract for a construction management firm, so that's using a piece of the budget. So we budget two ways. We budget for the entire project, and we have budget for each contract that's required.
Okay, so this would be based against the budget for the contract.
Yes.
Thank you.
Julie?
Yeah, I would just add to this that it probably would be prudent, based on the comments that have been made here as well, but to go by the standard policy of running it by the executive committee before the executive director does that. I mean, there's just a little more transparency there, and that way we make sure that we've dotted all the i's and somebody else sees it.
Right.
Sure.
That's been our standard policy for between meeting type actions that need to be taken, and so I would delegate that to the executive committee.
You want to include that in your motion that I heard?
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do we have a second?
Sounds good.
Okay. Motion by Taylor, second by Pierce. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item, 17, authorization to execute agreement number 446 with the Public Trust Advisors for Investment Advisory Services.
Good morning, APC. Tom Buck, members of the APC. My name is Randy Carlton. I'm the CFO of the authority. A little background on this item, and then I'll ask for a recommendation from the APC to move this to the board. The authority has an investment program to invest its idle cash in a safe way, in a way to ensure that we have sufficient liquidity to pay our bills when those bills come in, and also to earn a competitive market rate of return. And a simple explanation is if we receive $1 in today, that doesn't mean we need to spend that dollar today. So we invest it in a way to where it's safe, it's there when we want it, and in the meantime, we're going to make something in form of an investment return on that. Historically, the authority has had this investment portfolio and used assistance from an investment advisor on a portion of those assets. We have currently about $226 million. There's $30 million invested with the state of California in a short-term portfolio called LAIF. I mainly use that to ensure that we have a positive balance in our checking account. We have about $66 million of bond proceeds that are used to pay the construction milestones as projects are completed. And then we have about $110 million of individual securities in a portfolio that's managed with the assistance of an investment advisor. That portfolio includes securities such as U.S. Treasury notes, federal agency securities, high-grade corporate obligations. And with the assistance from an investment advisor, we're able to monitor those securities, reinvest maturities as they occur, and to provide the authority with a market rate of return. In April, the board approved an RFP to receive proposals for investment advisors. We received 8 proposals. We had an evaluation criteria that looked at applicable experience, the experience qualifications of the assigned individuals, the standing of the firm, the standing of the individuals, their approach to managing public funds, and of course the pricing and how the firm is paid. Let me just take a moment to explain how these firms make their money. They make their money on charging a management fee, which is a % on the amount of assets managed. They do not earn a penny from the trade of a security. There's no commissions one way or the other to the investment advisor whenever a security is purchased, sold, or matured. There's no, in other words, there's independence that the investment advisor is providing us direction on our investments without any incentive to sell or buy a particular security. Of the 8 proposals that we received, the proposal from the firm of Public Trust Advisors was deemed to be the most responsive to the authority's objectives. They are an independent advisor. They represent over 50 public agencies. They have over $17.2 billion of assets under management. The fees ranged, when you look at all the 8 of the proposals, I may have said 7 earlier, but there were 8 proposals, ranged from $55,000 to $150,000 when you make the assumption of $100 million of assets under management for an entire year. So $55,000 to $155,000, that's the low to high. The pricing from PTA was the lowest. It's approximately $55,000. That's almost $50,000 less than what we're paying the current investment advisor. So going out for proposals in this particular instance, even though the issue here is not about fees, it's not about how much we're paying for investment advice. We're really buying the qualifications and capabilities of the firm. It's just a benefit to also be paying a competitive fee. We have representatives from the firm here. If you would like to hear from them directly, that said, staff recommendation is that APC refer this contract to the board for approval. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Would anybody like to hear from PTA? Yes. Okay. What would you like to hear from them?
First of all, would we get a report annually from you guys?
Yeah, let me just introduce Mr. Tom Tate from Public Trust Advisors. He is the lead representative of the firm on this engagement. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, we will be providing, as you normally do, quarterly reports. So we will bring Mr. Tate and his team in when it comes time to present the quarter ending June 30th statements, which will probably be at the September APC, and we'll have a full presentation at that time from his firm on the portfolio and discuss the investment directions.
Hey, I'd like you to say a few things all about you.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'd also like to know your activity locally. I noticed that your business address here on the contract is in Denver, so I want to know your familiarity with the region.
Sure. For the record, Tom Tate, I'm a managing director for Public Trust Advisors, and on behalf of my colleagues, Mark Krieger and John Grady, we're excited to be here today. So good morning. Public Trust Advisors manages, as Randy said, just shy of $18 billion on behalf of public agencies, just like the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. We're very familiar with California code. Mark Krieger, who would be the day-to-day portfolio manager, Mark, maybe you want to come up here, has been managing portfolios for California entities for over 20 years. We manage just short of $2 billion on behalf of California clients that are subject to California Investment Code, so we're very familiar with that. In addition, we have a number of transportation type clients, not only here in California or historically in California, but nationwide as well. So we're deeply experienced team, very familiar with California code, have a number of clients here in California, and we're excited to work with Randy and his team in managing your portfolio.
Question, Newell?
Thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys taking an interest in us. Sort of a little bit deeper on Julie's question, do you have any physical offices in the state of California?
I apologize. We do. Mark and his team is based in Los Angeles. Your portfolio would be managed by Mark and his team in conjunction with our team in Denver, out of our Los Angeles office. So we do have a local presence and 12 clients here in the state of California. And again, approaching $2 billion in assets under management for entities here in California.
Great. All right. Thanks very much. We appreciate you being here.
Don?
And my question isn't more for Randy, is not related to the current contract, but my recollection is that under the current measure, we plan to issue one more bond. And if the new measure passes, we'll be issuing bonds. And I recall that the state now requires that we have a bond advisor. And I don't know when you spoke to firms to be the investment advisor, whether you talked to them about that capability too, or would you expect that we would let that as a separate contract?
Too many mics.
Thank you. Yeah. The way these mics work, there can only be 4 on at a time, and fifth person is out of luck. So, all right. Yeah, a couple things. You're absolutely right. There has been a number of new regulations from the Dodd-Frank Act, one of which is the municipal advisor rule. We have that as a part of the contract with our financial management advisor, which is separate from our investment management advisor. They're two separate disciplines, and we would work with our financial advisor on the placement of those bond proceeds, and that's how we keep them separate intentionally so that we can comply with that regulation.
Bill?
Actually, a question for Randy, since you got your microphone back on. And I haven't sat here over the years I've been on and off to actually see one of these contracts. And the question I have is while we say it's $55,000, it's actually a fee basis. Does our current contract is similar, just different numbers? It's fee basis as opposed to what you would call a flat fee. A flat fee is, I say, I agree on an annual basis, it's going to be $55,000 regardless of the balance.
That's correct. It's based upon the amount of assets under management. It's a fixed percentage. Okay. And when we compare, do this on an apples-to-apples basis, assuming $100 million of assets under management of what we're paying now in fees.
That was the math I saw.
Versus what is in the contract now that we're proposing, it's about a $50,000 savings to the authority on an annual basis by obtaining more competitive proposals.
And is lay funds excluded from that balance?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think this is great. I look forward to opportunity to work with a new firm and a new set of eyes. Thanks.
Thank you. Julie, and then Don.
Yeah, I actually had another question that brought up. I think when this goes to the authority, it would be helpful to outline who we have helping us manage which pots, so that it's clear that we have financial management, we have investment management, we have bond people, we have, so that everybody understands what the different roles are, and that gives us sort of that cross-pollination, but it also gives us protections. And I think that would be really important to lay out for the authority when this goes forward to the rest of the board.
I'd be willing to make a motion to accept this.
Okay. I'll second it, but I did have one other question. As a result of this agreement, would you expect that any of the funds that we hold would be would be redirected to another investment?
Not right away. We'll certainly have them take a hard look at our security holdings, and we would expect to see some of that come back to the APC in September when we present that quarter-end report. There may very well be some strategic directions that we want to take differently than what we're doing now.
All right, thank you.
A motion to accept the staff recommendation by Ornrich, second by Tatson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 18, authorization to execute amendment number 1 to agreement number 435 with Stantec Consulting Services for program and project management services.
Chair Bud, Rush Chittenden here. I'm going to just do a brief introduction and then open it up for questions. So as you recall, we hired Stantec about 15, 16 months ago to provide program project management services, and that's a term that covers a very wide variety of services. They actually provide support to all departments in the authority. Most of it is to the projects department, but they do provide support to other parts of the agency. So we wanted to take the opportunity to use that contract to add a couple of different functions. So that's really what this amendment is about. The first is one that we've discussed numerous times, I think most in the planning committee, but certainly that's come forward to the authority, full authority board that you all sit on, and that's to assume the responsibility of Central and East County 511 and Safe Transportation for Children program. And Peter is leading that effort and has worked very closely with Stantec and with Transpac and the existing organization to bring that over. So that's one item, and if you have any questions about that, I would ask that Peter address those. And then the second is related to our shared autonomous vehicle program. As we reported prior through an amendment in the strategic plan, BART has sponsored about a $250,000 project out of a BART fund to invest into that program because they see the value in terms of relieving the need for parking at BART stations. That's their motivation to do that. And Jack Hall is the manager for that. So Peter can address questions related to 511. Jack can address any questions related to the shared autonomous vehicle. I think we've chatted a little bit about all of that. We also have Frank Ferger with Stantec here that can answer any questions that you may have. So I'd like to turn it back to the chair and the committee and see your pleasure.
Julie and then Newell.
Yes, thank you. Good presentation in the staff report, very comprehensive. The only thing I have, and I asked Peter, and I think it's an oversight because I think it's an assumption, but it's not written down here, and that would be regular reporting back to Transpac and Transplan on a regular basis about the programs being done on our behalf, because I know there are local jurisdictions who really would like to know what's happening. There also would need to be an annual summary because we need that report to submit with our annual checklists for our growth management element, since that's a requirement and that's what this project is supposed to do. So unless this is a sneaky way of making sure that we have a bunch of jurisdictions out of compliance. No, I am sure that was assumed, but I think it's probably a good thing to make sure it's in writing for the
Yeah,
for
we
the
do have a
final
bullet item in there regarding reporting, and it was specifically kind of mentions TFCA, but we can add, we can
well,
beef
it
that up.
mentioned more reporting back to CCTA.
Right.
It
We'll
didn't
beef
mention
that up to include reporting to the RTPCs.
and to the local jurisdictions, so they have a report to submit.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Newell.
Thank you. Peter, just on 511 program. So can we just go over what is the breadth? Who will benefit from this taking over? Is it just, sorry, there's a mosquito flying around here between us, between Central and East County, or who is going to participate in this? Sort of looking, I know there's a path of where the money comes from, but just want to know who benefits from this, which specific agencies?
So right now, what we anticipate with this immediate transition is it's going to be Stantec will take on the role that was being done by Transpac and the city of Pleasant Hill through their agreement. So it's the jurisdictions in Central and East County. Central County in the case of the TDM 511 and the Safe Routes to Transportation, East County in the case of the 511 program, because they don't have that separate Measure J funds in East County for the safe transportation for children. One of the scope that you see in front of you one of the tasks added to the Stantec scope is to do this transition and strategic plan just for the Central East County, so we can kind of get that part taken care of and see where we're going. At the same time, we're doing a strategic plan with the other two offices, the SWAT office, which is in San Ramon, and the WICTAC office, to do kind of a county-wide strategic plan. So the three offices will be working together on that to kind of see if there's some new direction that needs to occur. Is the whole program county-wide as effective as it can be? We see a lot of technology out there. Randy and I meet with people, these startups coming in, once a week, it seems like, that have these great ideas. So we want to see if we can start incorporating some of those into the whole county-wide program.
That's great.
So I hope that answers your question.
No, yeah, absolutely. Glad to hear that. I was hoping that it will kind of help reach out. I mean, there were some barriers before there for a variety of reasons, and I think now there's an opportunity to spread that. And I see that Stantec has already hired 2 people from that program, and I hope they'll continue to reach out to some of the others. So, great, thank you.
Don?
Thank you. So maybe I missed it, but in the budget increases, the amount of the budget that goes to Stantec is enumerated by program. Speaking from SWAT, which is the one I know, when we see our budget, we see how much of those equivalent amounts go to the administrative cost of managing the program versus pass-throughs to the agencies who provide the services or whatever. And I didn't see where that was enumerated here, so maybe if you could direct me to that.
That right now is going to be, those details are going to be taken care of as part of this transition plan that we're going to be doing. Right now, what we've done is we've taken the budget that was going to, that Transpac approved, and we were going to get ready to put into the city contract for this next year, and we've just moved those dollar amounts back to us essentially to help support this program, 100%.
So how will the cities in Central and East County then have visibility into how much of the costs are for administration, how much of the costs are for program benefits for, let's say, safe transportation for children?
We'll disclose that. We have monthly meetings with the other 2 offices, and that's something we anticipate that not the formula, but some of those program costs possibly changing. It could be that that SWAT wants to take over one of the other countywide programs. So those numbers are kind of move around a little bit, and then we'll just figure out based on how the formula splits the money out. The 3 offices also talked to some extent about the countywide programs, just taking those funds off the top, and then splitting the other money up by formula to the other offices. So that stuff's still kind of in the making as part of the strategic plan.
All right, thank you.
Newell?
Just to tag on to so under this actual contract, I think it was $2.4 million a year or something, approximately in your program. Only $100,000 is being added to Stantec's contract at this point in time for that item, for the 511. Am I reading that correctly?
It should be the whole.
2 point, because I think what I was hearing, and I hear different, I heard the question, it wouldn't seem that we'd want to be transferring the $2.4 million to Stantec before we know what we're getting. We would only want to transfer the money that it costs to organize the project for a specific period of time, what it takes to get the administration, and then they come back with a program. Because we're transferring the $2.4 million. You gave away the program money to a company that sells labor. it says right here, it says this agreement, and the way I read it says includes $100,000 for this task, which is only for the TDM 511 Task 8. But are we saying that the way this is written, that it's all the entire funding coming over?
Yeah, the contract itself really begins on page 1831, and then you can see there's 4 tasks. So we're kind of focused on task 8, which is the strategic plan. Now, concurrent with developing the strategic plan, they do need to keep the program going. So, I can see if you want to give some direction about some limited funding, but we don't want to scale it back to just the strategic plan because then everything would stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I was looking for the exact page here and I still can't seem to find it. But so we already have the program in place.
Right.
There has been commitments made to doing, summer bike program. There's
so all of those programs move forward. So I want to make sure that
for this first transitional year until we get the strategic plan in place, those are going to continue to move forward.
So there's a 12-month funding opportunity.
Yes.
For those. And, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And we pay on a monthly. We don't give them the money. I mean,
right.
they give us invoices and to reimburse. And
okay, that makes sense. If then really what this is. The approved plan and financial, the deliveries and the deliverables are already defined. That money and that program is being transferred over for a 12-month period.
That's correct.
Subject to those conditions.
And if we get some information early and we have a new program we want to implement, we'll bring that back to you.
Do I have a motion? And a second? Okay. Motion by Julie, second by Bob. Are you satisfied that all those conditions for disclosures and reports are in there? Do you want to add any of that?
I have verbal agreement here and they will put those in before it comes to the authority, that there will be regular reporting to both of the RTPCs and to this board on a regular basis, as well as furnishing the required information to all the local jurisdictions for compliance.
Okay, in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, 19, authorization to execute agreement number 442 with Insight for information technology support and services.
Good morning, Randy Carlton. I'm still CFO. The item here is a contract approval with a technology company that we've been working with since 2008 on a month-to-month basis. We're now formalizing that contract. Let me just back up. For a smaller organization like CCTA, a more cost-effective and practical way of going about handling our IT needs is to outsource. So we spend about $60,000 a year for comprehensive IT services, everything from break and fix at the PC level to administering our network, to addressing Mr. Irasaki's IT needs in the middle of the night should he be on the road. So it's a very comprehensive set of skills. Technology is constantly advancing. So instead of hiring a permanent staff with a jack of all trades, so to speak, we benefit far more by outsourcing this to a to a company located in this country, located in Berkeley, California, that has the full complement of skills, and it's worked out well for us. In our last staff report, we mentioned Stantec and how they're working with us on the TDM. Well, Stantec approached me a few months ago and offered their assistance to take a look at our IT. And, they have that expertise in-house as well. And so we sat down, we took a look at all of the invoices, everything that we've been paying for. We took a look at the marketplace and what this managed IT service marketplace looks like and what the current prices are. And we put together a compelling argument to go back to Insight and renegotiate that contract to lower our prices and to get more in the way of holding them accountable. We now, in this proposed contract, have service level objectives, which are commitments by the firm to meet our needs within a period of time. So there's no black hole of calling the support line and just waiting. They now have to pick up within a certain number of minutes. We now have, this independent review. We've gone back to Insight. We hammered out a new contract, and I've written it up and brought it to the APC. We're recommending board approval. It saves a few dollars, not a lot, because it's just not a big part of what we do, but when we need IT, we need it to work. As a small organization, we have the needs of a large organization, and unlike some of the other cities and counties that have larger staff, they have the IT department, but for us, outsourcing is the best and most effective solution. So with that, I have the staff recommendation, and after that, I do have a little bit of an update I do need to give you on our IT. So staff recommendation is that you refer this to board for approval.
I move that we accept this. This is a great company. I've worked with them before, and I think this is mutually beneficial for both of us to have an annual contract. It's a good commitment.
Motion by Arnerick, second by Tatson. Did you have something, Bob?
Yes, sir. Is it possible to, do they give instructional aids to somebody like Ross or is that extra? And they can fix the phones up here also?
That's a good question. That's and a good reminder for me. As a part of this renegotiated contract, we included in it that they would be the point of contact for any kind of telephone issues. I mean, telephones are supported by a different company called Packet Fusion, but part of what we're trying to accomplish is a one-stop shopping. So when we pick up the phone, if it works, or a cell phone, we call one IT support number, and from there they work with the appropriate provider.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. If I could have just a moment for an IT update. This is somewhat of a important and urgent matter. We would have an item on the APC agenda today if we knew about this in time, but you'll see it on the board agenda for July 20th. When we made a change in 2008 to start paying our own bills, start administering our own financial system, and break away from the county, we bought 4 servers, to set up that system. And it's proved to be a good strategy for the authority, because we now have within our power time to pay our vendors and according to our own time needs, instead of filling out a piece of paper, which is what we used to do, and driving it over to Martinez, to the county finance department, where it sat in an in basket waiting to be processed along with all the other county business. So that decision has been sound and it's worked for us, but those servers purchased in 2008 have outlived their useful life, outlived their warranties, and we had one crash just last week, and the server that hosts our financial production database system. But we have a backup. We worked with Insight to flip over to the backup so that we can keep things going. We paid our bills. We didn't miss a beat. Yeah. So a long explanation is. Yeah. Yeah, it's how I buy my cars. I drive them until the wheels fall off.
Would we like an emergency action by this? I mean, I can add this to the agenda right now, and we can make a formal recommendation. Yes.
I'll third it.
So it's now on the agenda. I would move that we recommend to the authority that we purchase these ASAP.
Okay. What I'm asking for, Chair Pierce, is the fact that we want to move to the cloud. All right. We want to get out of the business of owning the servers, having them on site, and we want them managed by the same technology company that we purchased the software from, so that they can do the updates, they can have them on site, and we now have reliable internet. All these things that have emerged since 2008. We think is a better model for us. So we will be recommending a software as a service agreement to move to the cloud for our financial system.
I would like to add one more thing. Besides having that backup, let's have a second. You never know. I know in our house we have two separate backups. We have a backup that's hosted in our house, and we have a backup that's hosted somebody else's house.
Yeah, that we do.
Because if my house burns down and my separate server goes down, besides my computer, I have it on a hard drive there, and I have it on a hard drive somewhere else on the cloud. So I really think we need a double backup.
We do.
So wait a minute. If you're really going to vote on this, I think we have to go through a process of adding it to the agenda as an emergency
No, we have to do it
item.
by 4/5.
Well, it's a two-part process. The first part is to add it to the agenda as an emergency item, which I think takes a supermajority, and then we have to vote on it.
You made a motion, we did not vote on it.
So do you really want to do this? Do you think it's
Can I
necessary?
ask a point of clarification?
Okay.
Having heard all this, is there any action you want us to take today?
No, it's mainly just to give you a heads up. I'll have all the financial, the financial commitment, which is, a break even, because when you compare the cost of buying new servers versus what it costs to go to the cloud, it's more cost effective. But I will have the contract and the cost and everything for the board on the 20th. I mainly just didn't want you to get caught off guard, surprised.
So do you want to press on, or do you want to withdraw your motion?
No, I do not want to withdraw my motion. I want to make us in compliance with the Brown Act. We've had far more discussion already than is allowed under the Brown Act. I'd like to formally add this to the agenda and then take a separate action to recommend to the full authority.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
That was me.
Okay, so
I second.
to add to the agenda, motion by Pierce, second by Arnerick, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Any
Now, the
opposed?
separate motion
Okay,
to
motion
recommend
carries.
the aforementioned discussion to the full authority for
Second.
approval.
Okay, motion by Pierce, second by Tatson to, for the staff recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. Next item, last item. Hercules Rail Station, Project 4001, request for appropriation of Measure J funds for agency coordination, technical and engineering support, and stakeholder and public outreach.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Hugh, Associate Engineer with the Authority. This is an action item, and it is an amended appropriation request from City of Hercules in response to your questions and comments from June's APC meeting. The request is for $400,000 in Measure J funds for agency coordination, technical and engineering support, and stakeholder and public outreach for Hercules Rail Station Project, also known as Regional Intermodal Transit Center. The appropriation will fund the city's effort to better demonstrate the benefits of the project in order to successfully compete for funding and secure commitments from the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority and San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. And per your request, the city has revised the appropriation request letter to address your questions and comments from last meeting. And they also provided more detailed scope of work with better task description and cost estimates. And with that, I would like to invite City Manager David Biggs, who's here this morning, to go over the changes that they've made and also to answer any additional questions or concern that you might have.
Please. I don't think your microphone's on.
I'm not usually on this side of the.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be back before you. I wasn't able to attend your last meeting, but we did rally around to respond to the questions that you have, and hopefully what we have before you this morning will do that. The city continues to make a lot of progress on the Regional Intermodal Transportation Center with close to $25 million of work completed or under construction at the moment, and some additional work to start a little bit later this year. What we found as we continue to pursue funding with a lot of advice from the authority staff is that we need to secure commitments from the two rail operators to make us more competitive to really, as we talk about here, is getting the train to stop in Hercules and allowing us to achieve our overall objectives. So with that, in order to be more competitive in the funding applications we're making, we need to better document the demand that will be there for the rail and other service proposed for the site, together with the benefits to the region overall of the project in Hercules, which is designed not just to serve us locally, but also to be of service to West County and divert traffic off a very highly congested Highway 80. One of the key goals of that is to secure commitments from both the Capital Corridor and San Joaquin services to stop once a station is built here. In response to your question to the last meeting, as Stephanie noted, we have provided a more detailed scope of work with costing associated with those components. Our focus of this work will be to get formal requests to both Capital Corridor and San Joaquin to agree to service early on in this process. The approach will include doing some updated demand study so far as passenger boardings for both rail and other transit service we have down there, how that will work with the system overall as we look at rail service through this corridor. We did do, in 2009, the city did do updates or an analysis of what demand would be. That was at the tail end of the Great Recession, where there was a lot of reduction in travel and demand. And just to note that at that point in time, the demand did meet Capital Corridor's requirements for service stops. So we'd anticipate, as we've seen the economy rebound, that we'll see more favorable numbers coming out of that. In addition, we're coordinating this with the I-80 high capacity study being undertaken by WICTAC. We view the two efforts as being very symbiotic and complementary. The demand analysis we'll be doing for ridership will be fed into that effort, so there's no duplication of effort. And one of the key things that we're going to be doing here and looking at our project together, other high priority projects on Interstate 80, is to do this in collaboration with other partners. We've had a very good working relationship with a variety of funding sources, the Union Pacific, other organizations, and we'll continue to do that with WICTAC. Again, we're very involved with WICTAC and their efforts. So we think this will really allow us to go to the next level and leverage the funding that you provided us historically over the years. We've been very successful in attracting outside funding sources, federal and state grants and other monies. And really the Measure J and Measure C monies over the years have really allowed us to leverage that together with some local resources, our gas tax and return to source that comes from you as well. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, together with Terry Bowen, who's part of our consultant team. We're trying to take from your playbook of CCTA about how to do this outreach and be successful at it. So we thought by borrowing from what you've done, we'd be very successful at that, and we're hopefully, if we've answered your questions, you'll be able to recommend this to the full board.
Questions, Newell, and then Don?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for revising this. I have one small suggested change, and it's on the same theme before. This is on the report 20-8. It's item number 2, where it says develop and implement a strategy as well as formulate and prepare documentation oriented at. It's the next few words. Those are the words that I think that made us a little uncomfortable about where it says gaining support. I really think all the description that follows that is really clear. I would just suggest that that be removed. It's to develop and implement a strategy as well as formulate and prepare documentation to seek funding and approvals for the RITC and get rid of the gaining-oriented and gaining support. And in that way, it's really kind of in the scope of what we're saying. And then when you read everything else down there, it's trying to do that statement.
Certainly we could certainly do that.
Great, thank you. And otherwise, I would support this.
Don?
Well, I was just going to express my thanks for the amendments that have been made since the last version. They address my concerns and will make it easier for me to convince my fellow San Joaquin JPA partners to support the project when it comes before us. So I would be happy to move it with the amendment suggested by Commissioner Arnold.
Second.
Julie.
Yeah, I just want to thank Hercules and the Gray Bowen team and certainly Stephanie for working so hard on taking our comments at our last meeting to heart and revising this package. I think this is much more demonstrative of what you really meant to say in the first place. I think this is absolutely consistent with our policies in the past of building support for projects and making something really happen. So I am very supportive as well. So looking forward to supporting.
Any other questions? Motion by Arnerick, second by Tatson. Okay, motion by Tatson, second by Arnerick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you. We look forward to reporting back on our successes working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of our action items. Any correspondence or news clippings we don't already have? Commissioner and staff comments? Any comments from the chair has no comments. Any comments from commissioners? Hearing none. Any from the executive staff? None. Any other business? Adjournment to next meeting, Thursday, September 1st, 2016. Enjoy your vacation.